think people, I think most people in America, and I'm going to believe this until the unthinkable happens, which it won't, because you all are going to work so hard. I believe that people get it, and when you talk straight to them, they understand. For example, I'll give you, this is my pet peeve on the healthcare thing. It's why I think Pete is onto something. It's why I get angry at some of the other candidates. I think the Democrats have the #1 issue. No matter, you can poll it as many times as you want. In any state, the reddest of reddest states, the #1 issue to people is health care and the cost of prescription drugs. It's the #1 issue, over and over and over again. So Mayor Pete steps in and says, we do need to find a way to cover every American. And we do need to have a public option. We do need to have Medicare for all who want it. But at the same time, it may not make sense to tell 140 million Americans who are perfectly happy with their health care, many of which have negotiated agreements through their labor unions and fought very, very hard for those health care benefits, to tell them that they now have to give it up. So I think it's that pragmatic approach to budgeting that when you say to people, we can get there, but we can't break the bank, and I'm going to let Tom talk a little bit more about that because he's the financial guy. We can't break the bank to get there. But at its core, what you had when you started with special ed and investing, that's why I mentioned the Douglas Plan and others. We spend an inordinate amount of time, for example, in the city that we love, Baltimore City, talking about squeegee boards. Spend an inordinate amount of time. Now, a couple things can be true at the same time. It's uncomfortable for everyone, the current situation. Makes people uncomfortable. People of all races, all colors sometimes are uncomfortable. It's not a great situation for the kids. But simplistic answers, again, don't work. So when you hear Pete talk about those issues, and he talks about in this Douglas Plan, investing in our cities, investing in youth programs, addressing the opioid crisis, addressing the lack of jobs. We need more vocational training. We need every school in America to be every bit as good as the schools in the richest parts of Baltimore County and Howard County and Montgomery County. As they often say, the quality of your education can't be determined by your zip code. It's immoral. And budgets at their core are statements about values and morals. And I am confident that when Pete Buttigieg and when Mayor Pete sits down with his team, that budget will be a reflection of these kind and decent and good values that the councilman is talking about.
Great, thank you, thank you. Budgets are everything. I mean, for Baltimore County, I chair the Spending Affordability Committee. I have a background in economics and run an investment company. And you know, if you don't have a budget that reflects your priorities, then you don't have much at all. And if you're not paying for these things, then you're passing on obligations to your kids and your grandkids and your great-grandkids. So let's talk about for that just a second. So when we're looking at the budget right now, we look at the debt, the national debt of $23 trillion and growing. If you want to get a little depressed, just Google U.S. national debt clock, and you'll get a little depressed as you watch the numbers keep spinning and spinning. It really is a sobering thing, and maybe you do it right before you get a little antidepressants. It's really bad. I mean, it's something that's so striking, it's hard to look at. And so if we have $23 trillion in national debt, and we have $1 trillion per year in deficit, that's basically being added to the debt. Let's talk about that for a second, and I'm glad that you asked it, because I remember when the current occupant of the White House, was trying to sell us some corporate tax cuts. And does anybody remember what the current occupant pledged to all of us? That if we cut corporate tax rates, what would the U.S. GDP, the gross domestic product, be right now? 4%. Anybody remember?
4%.
That's right, 4% to 5%. So what is the GDP right now projected over the next 12 months? Anybody know?
2.1%.
You got it. I knew Kate would know.
There you go.
And that's great, Kate. And so did that work? Did all these tax cuts work? Did GDP go up to 4 or 5%?
No.
No. Did the deficit go down or up? Deficit went up. What did the current occupant in the White House say? What would happen to the deficit in 4 or 5 years? it'd be completely gone. It's not gone, it's actually gone up. So when people say that we're going to cut your taxes and revenues are going to increase time and time and time again, it doesn't work, it's never worked. Supply side economics is fairy tale land. Does anybody know when Democrats are in the White House, do deficits go up or deficits go down? Deficits go down, right. So who is the party of fiscal responsibility? Is it the Republicans or is it the Democrats? It's the Democrats, for sure. There's no doubt about it. By the way, stock markets do better under Democrats in the White House than Republicans. If somebody tells you, oh, it's the economy, it's wonderful. Okay, well, when Obama was president, guess what? The stock market went up over 140%. When Trump's in, it's up about 70%. So Obama's still twice as much as what Trump is. So don't let somebody tell you that there's this magical, wonderful economy out there, when in reality, we're paying for this on the backs of our kids and our grandkids. And so let's talk about one other thing real quickly, because
Get started on this. I told you, get started on finance.
We're going way too long, and I know there's a debate coming. But it's really important to understand that some of the other candidates that are running for president right now have plans. Now remember, national debt, 23 trillion. Some of the candidates that are running, not Mayor Pete, but some of the other candidates, some of their plans alone cost 20 to 30 trillion more to our country's debt and deficit. So what happens if we get too much debt? What happens if we get too much deficit? What could happen? What could happen? Hyperinflation. Hyperinflation could happen. What else could happen? A currency crisis where all of a sudden our dollar's worth a lot less. Eventually people have to pay the bills. And one of the best things about Mayor Pete is he understands this. He's willing to have wonderful things because budgets are all about priority, but he also has a plan to realistically, and I mean realistically, pay for these things. And that's another really, really attractive thing to me about Mayor Pete, because he's honest and he's a budget that is real and based on facts and not fairy tales.
Let's get a drink and get ready for the debate.